Hello and welcome to Talking Tullahoma, a weekly podcast recapping the week's news, talking to the newsmakers, and looking ahead to upcoming events. I'm Kelly Lepchinsky, and today I'll be talking with city leaders about the first city property tax hike in 10 years. After the interview, stay tuned for some summer energy saving tips and to hear about events that are on tap for the weeks ahead. But first, here's a look back at the week ending Friday, June 27th. First up, in the last episode, I talked to Alderman Matthew Bird about a 20-cent property tax increase that was set to be approved with the city budget. Well, on Monday, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen passed that budget with the tax increase intact. We'll hear more about that later on. The good news this budget year is that the county voted against a 10-cent property tax increase last week, so it's just the city bill that will go up at the end of the year. Now, my conversation with Alderman Bird was a long one, and I said last week I cut it into two parts. In the first segment, we talked only about why a tax increase was needed for road improvements. What's left are the tangents from that conversation. We talked briefly about sidewalks and affordable housing. When we get to that segment, you may hear some of last week's questions repeated. That's just to put those answers in their proper context. I also told you last week that the city of Manchester has voted to operate the Coffee County Conference Center directly, rather than through the volunteer board members that make up the Public Building Authority. So it should come as little surprise that all 7 of those volunteer board members submitted their notice of resignation over the weekend. They say the move will allow Manchester Mayor Joey Hobbs to select an entirely new board, a board more suited to carry out his plans for a new tourism center. That move may also give Hobbs the opening he needs to dissolve the Manchester PBA entirely. Now, for his part, the mayor says an independent audit is being scheduled to identify deficiencies and areas of improvement. Now, I can't speak for the last couple of years, but I can say that if the center's budget presentation hasn't improved since the Tullahoma News investigated it, well, I wish those auditors the best of luck. Even as the conference center lost nearly $1 million each year, the records were never transparent, which is why in 2020 the county PBA washed its hands of the center. The county dissolved its agreement and transferred all operations to the city of Manchester under a new city PBA. Now, by taking control of the center away from the new Manchester PBA, Mayor Hobbs hopes to see real operational change. The center has operated at a loss since its inception in 2002. Meanwhile, by midweek, only 3 of the 27 employees affected by last week's WARN notice have applied to keep working at the center. General Manager Rebecca French was not one of them, and there have been about 15 applications to fill her position. Still, Mayor Hobbs was quick to point out that if you have already booked an event at the conference center, you don't need to worry. The city has got you covered. Now, back in Tullahoma, if you will spend any time at Wagner Park this summer, you'll want to use caution around that central parking area. That area is now an active construction zone. The Tennessee Army National Guard is there helping to expand the parking lot and to improve drainage as part of an agreement with the City Parks and Recreation Department. Members of the 230th Engineering Battalion have already begun some minor building work at the newly named Joe Moon Field. Surveying, excavation, and construction are expected to continue into the early fall. And you may find yourself spending some more time at Wagner Park in the months ahead, because when students return to school at the end of July, the Tullahoma High School Stadium and track will be closed to the public until students leave campus for the day. After school hours will begin at 4 o'clock, but school teams and organizations will have first access to those areas. So if you've been accustomed to walking the track during the day, you may want to visit a local park or the Greenway this fall. Now, back to city business. Today, we'll finish up our discussion with Alderman Bird, which was recorded last week ahead of Monday night's board meeting. Then we'll talk to Tullahoma Mayor Lynn Sebourn about Monday night's vote. As we get started, Alderman Bird is talking about his eye-opening realization that the city budget wasn't packed with wasteful spending just ready to be cut.
It was a real double-edged sword, learning, yes, we are running so well, but then at the same time, there isn't much to cut.
Right. So we're running really well on what we're already doing, but what we're already doing is falling short on roads. And if we're going to not fall short on roads, and people have told us clearly they don't want us to fall short on roads anymore, then this is the only way to address it, is by bringing some more money in that can pay for those roads.
That is correct. And it's something that, and I don't want to point fingers anywhere, but historically the road budget has been something that has been pulled from in order to cover other expenses, because it is such a large number when you see it. It's, well, they couldn't possibly need that much.
Yeah, well, I mean, $250,000 a mile, and you have said how many miles of road?
A little bit over 175.
Right. So there you go. Divide that by a quarter, the 25, divide that in
yeah.
a fourth of that, and that's going to be a humongous number in the millions.
Oh, yeah, it's over $40 million. If we were to pave every road in Tullahoma in 1 year, it would be over $40 million. So that's,
Yeah, there you go.
if we can bring it up to a little over $1 million, then that's,
And that would still be 1/40th of the roads getting done per year. So it's not something that gets done quickly. It is not something that you're going to go, oh, I got that immediate return on my investment from my tax increase, because so much of that money it has to be budgeted per year. Sure, $40 million would do it in 1 year, maybe, but you wouldn't have enough people to do it. You wouldn't have enough equipment to do it.
and one of the other things is a grant money. Getting the state or federal government to pay for the paving of roads, it's something that I had some really long conversations about. And one of the issues with grant money is there's always some red tape or some bureaucracy attached to it. The city used grant funding for, I believe it was sidewalks near, I think it was East Lincoln Elementary.
Okay, I remember this happening, yes.
And
It's been a while, but
it's
yeah.
great news. We've got grant money. That means that local money is only having to pay a portion of that, 10 or 20%, I believe. Well, the problem was it was the red tape involved with that, and it was having to do wildlife studies and things like that that might not be needed for it, and that project ended up taking much longer than it should have been. And the entire time you're doing that, you're also having to maybe not directly pay someone, but someone's having to put hours into administering that grant, into filing the paperwork. And it makes it so that 10 or 20% that we're having to put in, that keeps growing higher and higher until
Right.
we still are getting extra money from it, but the time involved, we could have put in sidewalks in a whole lot more places.
Gotcha. And of course, sidewalks are another issue that I'm this is a detour clearly, because we're talking about roads, but I will say
I'm just going off the rails.
but I will say that is something that we have addressed in a very unique and I will say well done way, I believe. I'm not deep into it like you are, but we saw this need for sidewalks that we could not address across the board. And what we said is, when businesses come in, particularly businesses, if they're building on a lot of land, they have to put a sidewalk out that would meet up with whatever else is in that area. Now, in some cases, they're not meeting up anything yet. We've got little sidewalks to nowhere. But the plan is the next guy who builds next to them finishes the sidewalk in front of their place, and the next guy. You can't do that with roads. You can't just say, hey, you're going to put on your business on this city road. Guess you got to take care of that road now. That's not how it works.
Yeah. Well, and there has been a discussion for the sidewalks of including some sort of impact fees for developments over a certain number of lots, something that the city could allocate those funds towards something that's needed, whether that is sidewalks or an emergency road repair. But it's something that it's been discussed, but I think that it hasn't moved past that at this point. But it's something that I'm looking forward to get some more information about. See, are we going to get a whole lot of pushback from contractors wanting to come in that they don't want to build a house here because we're too expensive.
Right. It's such a hard issue. It really is, because you definitely see the needs. You definitely know it's something that people want, and you don't want it to get worse over time, and it'll just get more expensive the longer you let it go.
Oh, yes.
At the same time, one of the other things that you did so well, I thought, in the debates was to talk about affordable housing and our need for affordable housing in this town. How do we address that for people? Are we still working on affordable housing? Is this something that where your mortgage and your tax bill aren't making it harder on people?
For the budgetable housing, it's something that I have spoken with Mr. Quick about, the city administrator, about if we can help align a developer with a parcel of land, something that, they can work within what Tullahoma's household income is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that it's going to take time to do that. It's going to take the right developer with the right part of land in order to do that. And it's something that I would love to see happen, and it's going to take some time. Yeah.
I did some scary math, and clearly I'm making myself go crazy when I'm trying to get these numbers back out of my head. But I was doing some math on what, for some people, I mean, it's better than minimum wage. If you make $10 an hour, you're doing better than minimum wage, and what you would make a year and what that 30% would look like. And that came down to less than $500 a month. I don't know many people who have found rent or a mortgage that low. Now, we said the median income in Tullahoma is $55,000. I think that was the case at least during the debate. But median isn't mean. Median means there are just as many people who make more than that as there are people who make lower than that. Mm-hmm. And so I hope that we have some way to address, for those on the half of the population that's making less than $55,000, but still has to have a roof over their head. For those people who make $10 an hour are making 20-something a year, and are paying more than the $400 that would come out to as an affordable living expense. I hope that we move quickly in the wake of this tax increase to find something to get affordable housing back on the map. Whatever it takes to get that back on the map would be a great offset to that, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. Well, and it's something that it's what's weighed on me the most, is that this is going to impact lower income and fixed income households more than others. And that's the part that is the hardest about this, is knowing that that there is part of our population that it's going to affect a lot more than others, and that's the part that I absolutely hate.
Yeah. And when we say affect more than, I know that there's somebody out there in a $500,000 home going, it's not affecting them more. Do you know what my assessed value is? Do you know what that multiplier is for me? But you could afford a $500,000 house. Whereas this one, who's making $20,000 a year, was trying to find the cheapest thing they could, and it was still out of their budget. Mm-hmm. What's in their budget just isn't out there. And that's what we mean by will affect them more, because every $100 is $100 that feeds their family or pays for shoes. So it is something that we really have to make sure isn't just a pie in the sky. It's going towards something good. If I'm trying to feed my family, I would rather have that $100 in my grocery bill than in my road. Mm-hmm. So we have to find something, I think, that addresses that too.
Oh, yes. And it's something to strive for, and it's something that it's something I'm going to keep trying to push whenever I can.
Again, I'm just going to say how proud we should be that our budget is that closely attended. I mean, I know I worked at the newspaper previously, and I know that there were things that were not getting addressed in the interest of not having a tax hike.
Oh, yes.
And the fact that we are keeping it as lean as we are is a testament. The only reason that was a question is because it is something different than you had initially said, and we want to make people aware that that's not a flip-flop, that there was a real amount of thought into why this had to be done, and a learning process, things that you didn't necessarily know, like there being no waste in the budget.
Yep. And it's also the small items that can be trimmed. I think at this coming Monday's meeting, I think some of those might also be trimmed, and it's never going to be easy to do that, but what we can do to save money should be done. It shouldn't be ignored that, well, we're just going to do a property tax increase, leave everything in there, spend all the money we can. It's identifying some of the smaller things. They might be 0.1% of the budget, but 0.1% is something.
Right.
So that should be addressed.
And addressed it was. On Monday, the city board cut $250,000 from the budget in small line items, including parks and recreation programs and community service organizations that the city has previously helped to fund. Only the library and the Senior Citizen Center were saved from those cuts because the city owns both buildings and has a maintenance of effort agreement in place. Now, Mayor Lynn Sebourn listed the organizations affected by the cuts during Monday's meeting. The following clip has been edited for time. In it, you will also hear Alderman Tullahoma and Parks and Recreation Director J.P. Kraft. I'll be back in 2 minutes.
Let me read the ones that would be eliminated under that.
Okay.
Civil Air Patrol for 736. Let me see if I'm going to. Humane Society for 2,500. 114 Southwest Atlantic for 4,000 repairs. Skills Development Services for 2,086. The Tennessee Rehabilitation Center for 4,906. The Tullahoma Daycare Center for $5,888. South Central Human Resources for $2,574, Tullahoma Sports Council for $25,000, Casa Works Incorporated for $3,000, Horseplay Incorporated for $3,000, Imagination Library for $1,574, and the Tullahoma Community Foundation for $3,000. All those would be eliminated.
Again, all these are good causes, but if you took that $25,000, we could almost buy a washing machine for the fire department. We cut that out of the budget, but we can give away 25. I just don't think that's right, guys. That's my opinion.
That motion carries 5-2. That's a hard vote. So appreciate y'all.
I do have a point of clarification on the Rock Creek Concert Series. You said 28,000.
That's what it has
It's
on.
only 16. That is the entire cut that I proposed out of programming. 5,000 was the soapbox derby and 7,000 was girls softball. So that 28,000 number is the total out of that cost center. But you said the Rock Creek concert was 28. It's only 16. The rest of that money was those other two programs.
So just to make sure I'm understanding, this would be the Rock Creek Concert, Soapbox Derby, and girls softball.
Yeah.
That Cal Ripken taking over girls softball means that the city would no longer pay for it. Is that correct? That would be
Correct.
okay. Yes. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood that. It's not that we're saying no girls softball in Tullahoma.
No, that's changing the way we do
Okay.
it. So that passed 7-0.
Now, though the parks vote was unanimous, the service organization vote was not. The two votes against the cuts came from Alderman Zenobia McGee and Alderman Bird. Together, those two cuts amount to roughly $92,000, $93,000. That's my quick math based on what we just heard. With additional cuts to governmental positions, the board saved roughly $250,000, 1 mile of road. On Tuesday morning, I spoke to Tullahoma Mayor Lynn Sebourn via video conference. Did the meeting go the way you expected, or were those good cuts, bad cuts?
Pretty closely. I think, nobody likes cuts, right? Or I said nobody. I mean, some people like cuts, but it went about like I expected. I knew we had some discussion in our study sessions of some of those cuts, especially some of the ones related to nonprofits. I think those will be the ones that'll be controversial to some folks. I've already received some feedback on one of those this morning that was not positive, but that's okay. I think Alderman Toma had brought those, and we do get that comment a lot. Why is the government giving away tax money to different organizations, but why not all of them, or why not mine? And if we're not going to do that, we shouldn't give it to anybody. And I think that was the motivation there. Is we get a lot of feedback that government money ought to be spent for government purposes and not given away. We'll see how that works out in the long term. I'm sure we're going to get some feedback. We kept in the Senior Citizen Center, which has some really desperate need right now. And I've forgotten now what the other one was.
The library.
The library, yeah. The library is, we are mandated to support the libraries, and I would support that in any case. So we have a maintenance of effort, they call it, where you have to give them as much as you gave them last year. So library got 15,000. They also get money from the county as well. So it's not just us supporting the library. So that was one. Some of the other cuts were some things like we cut a few things in the rec program, like the Rock Creek Concert Series got cut. The other things were positions that are not filled right now, and some of those we may make some changes. So we just cut the money for now. some of those may come back a little bit as we decide how we're going to deal with those positions that had been sitting empty a little bit.
So I guess my question is, why did those cuts come up in the third and final reading and not earlier? I know that the $250,000 paves 1 mile of road. I know it doesn't get around the tax increase. But
Yeah. So I think some of those cuts did come up previously, but people weren't prepared to make their motions. I mean, we talked about most of those things in the study sessions as we went forward. I think this is my first time doing it this way. I've been on budget and finance for the county commission, and we worked through all these amendments in a committee structure over there. So the committee, the budget and finance committee, works through all those things a meeting at a time, and we make motions and add. But a lot of times we'll wait to the end and then make a bunch of motions, mostly for the staff's sake, so she doesn't have to keep rebuilding the budget every week. She can go do it one time. And I think this case, everybody kind of made their comments. We requested some additional information from the staff, which we got this week. And I think that kind of settled everybody in on what they wanted to try to do. And so that's why they came that way. But some of those things were discussed in study sessions.
yeah, and I'm encouraging anyone who has questions to go back and watch that meeting, because I do think, as you said, Bush Tullahoma made some very good points about the budgets and the financials that he asked for and you got to look at, and giving taxpayer money to organizations that really could be a little more self-sustaining.
That's the hope. That's the hope. So that was a big part of it. And then, we did come with some savings. And so the other big question then is, well, did we use that to reduce the tax increase, or do we use it to reduce the deficit that we were showing? And I think some of the deficit we're showing this year is real. I joke about being real because often what happens with these budgets, it's happened at the county many times as I've served over there, is you don't want to be too optimistic when you're making your budget. A budget is just an estimate. And so you've got an estimate on revenues. And so you're really concerned to say, well, maybe we're not going to get as much as we think we are. And on the expense side, we think, well, maybe we'll have a few more expenses than we think. So it shows as a high deficit. And then by the end of the year, often we'll close the gap. It was not unusual on the county side for us to close $1 million in gap by the end of the year, which sounds like a lot, but it's only a few percent of the budget, 5-10% maybe. And that has happened on the city side as well. But this last year, we dipped into the reserves just a little bit. And this year, we're projecting more. So that will help that. My thought on it, and we ended up, I think, with a 4-3 vote on that question as to whether to take the cut there in the reserves, was that for these paving costs and the business, the building, whatever we're going to have to do with City Hall in the future, those things require long-term sustainable funding. And that's what the property tax gives you. And if we were to have not done that, then as we have maybe the tax revenues don't come in as well or something, then we're kind of having more push and pull in the regular budget against those things. And I just think it's more stable the way we've ended up. Hopefully, if we're going to see those savings. And going forward, I think one of our challenges now, try to stay lean so that we don't eat up our reserves. I do believe eventually you spend reserves because that's why you have them. I've heard people say, well, you shouldn't spend reserves ever. Well, in that case, I'm collecting your tax money and never spending it. That really isn't fair either. So there's a give and take there. But I think this year, sales taxes are projected to be a little bit down. They are for us in the month of June. We actually were about 7% lower than we were last year, which is quite a large drop. Hopefully that won't stay that way every month. But we've also got some projects like the Summerlin project where we're going to have some more growth coming that's going to create more retail space. So hopefully in a few years, we'll see another increase in our sales tax, and that'll help cover some of these recurring expenses we know that are coming, because part of that covered pay raises this year. And obviously that has to go forward. And also we're going to have future pay raises. So we need to grow our sales tax enough to help cover that sort of thing. But the property tax tends to stay really stable. So that's kind of some of the thinking about where we were having that discussion.
And this is a good point, just to make the caveat that you made in the meeting, that the tax increase was specifically dedicated to roads. That money can't be pulled out and used to
now
fund
we'll
something
say
else.
yeah 15 cents of it was, and then the other 5 cents is to be devoted towards solving our municipal city hall. But yeah, one of the things that we did, we passed and of course it has to go through the state legislature to be final, but we passed a change to the charter that requires us to put in somebody figured out the percentage, I can't remember, it's like 2.86%, but basically whatever 1.5 million is of our current budget, that every year we have to put in that much percentage into paving every year. And the reason that charter change matters is because, the temptation is if I have some sudden need, well, we'll wait on that road paving, we'll pave it later. This will mandate that we do that. And if I want to change that, you can't completely tie the hands of any future board. They can always change the rules again. But in order to change it, like budget season is in June, July, or May and June. And well, to change the charter, they would have to pass a charter change, and then it has to be approved by the state legislature, which doesn't meet to the following spring. So they literally could not get that money, even if they wanted to, for almost a full year. And so it won't solve their problem that year. And so hopefully that's going to discourage anyone from taking the money just on a willy-nilly fashion.
Good deal. Well, is there anything else that you want people to know about the meeting that we haven't talked about?
Let me look real quick at the agenda here. So we had just a couple of quick things. We had several things for the police department. So we approved the purchase of a used vehicle for the police department. They swapped out and sold some radios back so that we could get some portable radios for our officers. Several things like that. We also had some discussions about moving the traffic control for the school crossing officers, and moving that under the responsibility of the schools. That's probably going to happen, but we're going to take our time and work with the school on that, because we realized after we kind of asked that there's only 1 month school starts in literally 1 month. And to actually get people hired and trained in 1 month in the middle of the summer for a part-time job that you have to work morning and evening, it's probably an impossibility to get done by the beginning of school.
It sounded like there was a little hint of possibly moving their lawn care to their budgets as well, but
yeah, I think that'll be a discussion for the future as well. And those are really the only two things I think that the city's kind of doing that's really probably belongs with the school. Obviously, we all work together all the time, but we are actually doing stuff for the school. Maybe it makes sense for the school to do it. So we'll continue to have that. The other thing we did, the intersection of Country Club Drive and Kings Lane out there, we're about to start a project to do a turning lane situation from the Kings Lane side. And so we had bought a house on the corner there for the city that had come for sale. And we carved out the little piece of land that we need. And now we're turning around and selling the rest of the property. So we made an agreement to reduce the sale price to hit a deal on that. So the city has come out with very little cost to that. We bought the property, took the piece we want and sold it back. And so now we've got the ability to build a turn lane. I think it's for $30,000, $40,000 that whole transaction will cost us by the time it's done. But so that was kind of it. And obviously the rest of the night was the budget. And appreciate all the aldermen. We had really good discussion. Everybody was respectful, and we identified a lot of stuff that we need to look at in the future, like are we reviewing our employee compensation properly every year, and some things like that. Do we really, want to keep running every program that we have now, or is there an opportunity to reduce some programs and going forward? So our key is always balancing the growth that we have with the programs that we want to have. And inflation, I'll just make one final comment, that people don't understand that the property tax doesn't automatically go up when your property value goes up. And that's one of the reasons that property taxes tend to get increased every once in a while, because the city pays for inflation just like you do. Everybody's expenses go up, including the cities. And at some point, there has to be an adjustment made on our side. So we hate that. But the good thing is that since we have to take a vote on that, it restrains, it's not like the city just gets more money every year. We have to actually think hard about that. And so we're trying to do that. So that's the update.
Now, the full budget, including all cuts and the tax increase, passed 6-1. The sole no vote came from Alderman Kurt Glick. Coming up next on Talking Tullahoma, we've talked a lot about city governance this week, so we only have time for one more segment. And this week, TUA Safety Director Eric Burton joined me in the studio to share some energy-saving tips during the first official summer heat wave. Summer just started, and already we've seen heat indexes around 105 degrees.
Right.
So going forward, we want our listeners to know how they can sort of help themselves not to get hit by that surprise utility bill. It's going to go up. There's nothing we can do about that. We know this time of year is hard, but we can make it a little bit easier.
Right.
So what are some of those tips?
One of the first things we need to understand is peak hours. So TVA has designated peak hours between 1 and 7 p.m. So during that time frame, it's more expensive to purchase electricity. Therefore, the cost of using electricity is higher. Those peak hours are set for June, July, August, and September. So during those hours, we recommend that you don't use large appliances, dishwashers, washer and dryer, anything that uses a lot of electricity. We need to conserve. Off-peak hours start at 7 p.m., so we would prefer you to do most of your activity after those hours.
And in fact, there's even an opportunity here because year-round, peak hours change.
Correct.
But the weekend is always off-peak. So anything that you can save, whether it's a load of laundry or all your loads of laundry or running the dishwasher, anything you could save to the weekend is going to save you a little bit as far as peak power is concerned.
Right. Right, and also, you can keep your blinds shut. That creates, a shade in your house, keep ceiling fans running. Just having the air circulating will lower, it'll make it feel cooler even though it's not necessarily lowering the temperature.
And then lowering the temperature. I mean, lowering the temperature is something you actively can do because your heating and cooling, no matter what time of year it is, your heating and cooling is about 50% of your bill.
Right.
But at this time of year, if you want to keep your house at 68, that's not a problem when it's 70 outside.
Yeah.
You're trying to keep your house at 68 and it's 100 degrees outside, your air conditioner is working longer and harder and using energy to do that.
And I'm glad you brought that up because every degree over 72 will be a 3% increase, can be as much as a 3% increase on your bill.
Yeah.
So it's important to know, it's all about what you can tolerate. Let's raise it to, or lower it to 70. Say you normally have it at 68. Let's raise it up to 70. Let's go to 72. Let's see what we can tolerate.
Right.
Because, if you go outside and it's 100 degree, the heat index is over 105, coming inside, even though it's 75 or 76, is going to feel cool. It's going to be refreshing.
Well, in fact, I came in the other day when it was up around, I don't know, in the high 90s. I walked into my house, which I do keep at 68, and it was almost too cold because of the comparison. So I know I could have gone up to 70 or 72 or maybe even higher and still been comfortable because compared to outdoors, I was actually cold indoors.
Right.
So there was an opportunity there for me to save money. But there are other opportunities as well because we know you're going to stay comfortable and somebody's going to be comfortable at 68 or 78.
Right.
But someone's just going to say, I'm comfortable at 72, I'm not touching that thermostat, that's 50% of my bill.
Right.
So what can we do with the other 50% of our bill? Like the dishwashers and the washing machines.
Well, I think it's, like we talked about the peak hours, it's important to try to set a schedule, whether it's you get up early in the morning, and do your washing, do your dishwasher, use your major appliances early in the morning, to offset that and keep from using those appliances during the peak hours.
And be logical, we've talked about this before, that peak hours are set for a reason. Of course, it's TVA has to generate power for every home in the Tennessee Valley, which is also trying to keep its house cool. So from 1 to 7, that's after the sun has come up, the peak heat of noon in the summer, and there you go. Everybody's got their air conditioners on all across the valley until the sun comes down or at least starts to go down. So you know that those are the hours, even if you don't have a magnet on your fridge. When is everybody using their air conditioning? I probably don't want to run electronics I can avoid during that time.
Right. So we have a tool that we use here at TUA. It's called cooling degree days. It's how you measure your energy usage, how much cooling that you've actually used for that day. And it's based on the fact that the average household turns on the air conditioner at 65 degrees. So 65 is a cooling degree. So let's just take, for example, you have 90-degree day, and we're using that base number is 65. So the difference is 25 degrees. So that's 25 cooling degrees. So if you keep up with that per month, you'll be able to get a pretty good general idea of how many cooling degree days that you have, and you'll understand why your usage went up and your bill went up.
Yeah.
If you keep up with this number.
Well, yeah, like we said earlier, if it's 70 degrees out and now using the 65, you only had to cool your house about 5 degrees and try to keep it there no matter what was happening outside. But when in the example you just used, if it's 90 and you're trying to shave 25 degrees off your indoor temperature, that's going to take your air compressor working harder and longer and staying there, because the minute it stops, you start to heat up again, and it's going to come back on.
Right. It's just a good way to measure usage and help you to understand why your bill's going up. Even though you feel like you hadn't changed anything, that air conditioner unit, because of the heat, is working overtime.
So now that's what happens if you haven't changed anything. But now let's
Right.
talk about some of the things you can change, because there's another whole half of your bill that if you know your electric usage is going to go up because of your air conditioner. There are things that you might not think about. And I'll give you an example, and I don't even know if you've thought about this, so I don't mean to catch you on the spot.
No, you're good.
But anything that changes temperature in your home, your oven,
Right.
your refrigerator, your hot water heater, and I'm going to posit that, because your water heater is about 20% of your bill,
Yeah.
water use can actually affect your electric bill. If you're running a bath, if you're leaving a faucet running and you're using hot water, or you're running a load of clothes and you're using hot water, you're going to bring more water into that water heater that needs to be heated.
Right.
So right there, that's another way you can save energy, is by being careful with your water consumption.
Yes. Also, unplug unnecessary appliances.
Absolutely.
A lot of people leave, laptops, all those things that you leave plugged in. They have little transformers on them. All that stuff, it added up together can create extra usage on your bill.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the oven, this is a great time of year, although
Yeah.
it might be too hot on some of these days that we're talking about to go outside and grill. You might not want to stand over a fire when
Right.
the outdoor already feels like fire.
Right.
But if you have something smaller, a toaster oven, an air fryer, these might even be better appliances to consider using, because even though appliances are another part of your electric bill, they are certainly going to use less power than heating up an entire oven for, say, a plate of French fries. Whatever
Right.
it is you're making, unless you're making a full meal, you can probably find a more efficient way to cook that thing than using your oven when it's too
Exactly.
hot.
I mean, if you can tolerate the hot temperatures, standing outside over a grill, can save you a lot of money, rather than firing off the stove or the oven. That's a big energy user, especially during those peak hours.
Yeah.
You know.
Now, we were interrupted by a little internal construction at the end there, but we hope you found something in that conversation that you can use. Our Book Talk segment will return next week with reviewer Kathy Rose. In the meantime, go renew your library card. It's free, and there's more available to you at the library than just books. Ask the circulation desk about the Library of Things. Now, here's a look at what's happening. His Story Told by Her, a tribute to Michael Jackson, will be performed by Kat Murray as a fundraiser for the new Jack T. Farah Elementary Playground on Saturday, July 12th. The show will take the stage at THS at 7 o'clock, and tickets are $15. You can get them by calling Kat at 461-0034. If you missed the Front Porch Friday concert at Cascade Hollow Distilling Company in June, get ready for July. On the 18th, artist Mason Villa will take the porch starting at 5:30. Tickets are $20 and include one complimentary beverage. Seating is first come, first served, so bring your own chair or blanket to mark your spot on the lawn. Get your ticket online at georgedickel.com. And if you are age 50 or older and you haven't stopped in at the Tullahoma Senior Center to find out what's going on over there, you need to do that. Whether you like to read, craft, or watch movies, or you like to line dance, go bowling, or play pool, the Senior Center has an activity for you. The center is an overlooked gem. And speaking of gems, there's a lapidary on site where you can cut and polish your own precious stones. But the center recently lost two major sources of funding, so your involvement is crucial. In an upcoming episode, we'll talk more about that with Executive Director Vicki Fulmer. But don't wait until then to find out more. The center is open weekdays from 8:30 to 3, and if the door is locked during that time, just ring the bell. And that's what's happening. Thank you so much for joining me for this edition of Talking Tullahoma. If you've got a story or an event that you'd like to share on the podcast, call and leave me a message at 571-7186. I'll be back soon with more of what makes Tullahoma tick. Until then, you can listen to Talking Tullahoma on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. New episodes drop on Thursdays. Please like and share, rate, and review. For the video version, follow us on YouTube. Just search for TUA LightTube. I'm Kelly Lepchinsky. Catch you next week.